brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking hosts, the good old boys.
Get ready to learn everything you ever wanted to know and a whole lot that you didn't. It's time for a Chats episode.
You're hearing me on this guy.
Yep. No, we're good. We hear you. We hear you fine. Great.
Cool.
Well, absolute pleasure and an honor to actually meet you, sir. I've been watching you on TV for years and love the work you are doing. I grew up, working for my father. He was a contractor. So, from age 7 on, I did every dirty job you can imagine. So, I feel your pain. I was a plumbing contractor. I've, rotted out sewer lines and much worse things than that. So, but that got me to go to law school. So.
Well, it's a crooked road, man. I know it. And it's really been very strange for me. This thing's been on the air 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking to Phil Kogan, the guy, the Amazing Race guy.
Yeah.
And he's got a show called Tough as Nails on CBS. Very similar in its ethos anyway. But same story as me. He's trying to do something for his granddad, something to honor work. And it's a hard sell in the TV business. I don't know why.
It's a hard sell to a large portion of this generation. I've been telling my kids since they were little, you don't have to go to school. If you want to go to school, do what you want to do, but there's nothing wrong with good, honest work. And, if you want to be a mechanic, if you want to build houses, it doesn't matter what you want to do. Just be the best at what you do.
Yeah.
So, and that seems to be lost on a lot of people here. You're one of the few people in Hollywood who speak the truth. So thank you.
Well, look, it's a strange thing, no matter how many times I do it, what winds up coming back over the net after this conversation is he's anti-college or he's anti-education. And that's not at all. But the idea that the best path for the most people is the most expensive path.
That's it.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, find something you love, go with it, make a good, honest living. That's all you have to do. We all have friends who went to school and got a degree in ancient Hungarian basket weaving and, can't find a job. So, $120,000 worth of debt.
Where are you sitting right now, Bob?
In my office at the house. So you're seeing the clean area, all the 500, 800 samples on the floor from every distillery on planet Earth. So it's about every day I get a box in. So the FedEx and UPS man think I have a real problem. So,
well, that's a good office. You win.
Yeah.
I have one bottle I keep down here for emergencies, but you're a.
Well, I've got them right here. So, yeah, it's a good ride. We're on season 10 now, and I started right after at the end of season 8, and it just keeps growing. We're doing between 8.5 and 11 million listeners a week, and it still sounds pretentious.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
that's terrific. Well, how did you come to find me? How did our paths cross?
Well, I saw that you had a whiskey, and have been a huge fan of the show for all these years, and that's what we do. We talk about whiskey. On our show, basically, it's 4 or 5 people sitting around a table, giving some basic information about whatever it is that we're tasting, going around the room tasting it, and everybody putting in their 2 cents. And, the amazing thing is when you have 4 or 5 people there, it doesn't matter what you pour. It can be $20 or be $20,000. There's invariably going to be one who goes, this is horrible. And there's going to be one who's going to love it. And then, and it changes daily. So we go around the room and discuss it and mercilessly mess with each other and try to get the knowledge off to the people and try, well, kind of like you do, try and make it funny and get the message across. I mean, everybody had that good teacher that you remember in school that made learning fun, and you actually learned in spite of yourself. So that's basically what we're trying to do. So
love it.
But tell me about Knobel. I mean, it's an interesting business, the whiskey business. I have a lot of friends in it. I mean, how did you find that path?
Well, a couple things happened. On the mercenary side, I realized as Dirty Jobs kept going and going and going, that the one of the comments that I heard more than anything else, aside from how could you do that, to what was your dirtiest job, was you seem like you might be an okay guy to sit down and have a drink with, and that. I take that as a sublime compliment, and it had just been on my mind for a long time. One of these days, I want to circle back with fans of the show and have a drink. So that was always there, but I never thought I would do a line of whiskey because, frankly, I don't think the world is suffering at the moment from a lack of B-list celebrities rolling out their own hooch.
Yeah, there's plenty, but there's
plenty.
Yeah.
But I got a partner, a woman named Mary Sullivan, and she had a friend in the sort of the wholesale end of the whiskey business. And through a weird set of circumstances, a tranche of 5-year-old Tennessee whiskey became available. Yeah. And
that's how a lot of people end up starting.
I mean, I didn't want to be, clever or dishonest about it. I mean, I hear people talk all the time about this was my wish fulfillment. And so I hired an expert and sat down and started growing wheat in Oklahoma somewhere. And it's like, that's not how it happened for me. They said, look, come on down to Tennessee, try it. If you like it, we should talk. So I thought it was terrific. And then when Dirty Jobs came back after the lockdowns, actually during the lockdowns, I thought, what a fun way to celebrate the return of the show. Knobel was the name of the man who inspired Dirty Jobs. It was my pop, Carl Knobel. He's not around anymore, of course, but he inspired the show. He inspired the foundation that I run today. And because the show came back, I thought, well, he only had girls, right? So his name kind of died with him. It's an unusual name. Yeah. So I said, let's do a whiskey in his honor. And if people like it, we'll keep doing it. But it started just as a fundraiser for my foundation. Yeah. But the feedback was great.
You've done great work with that foundation. I mean, the number of people that you've put through trade schools and basically handed them a way to make a living. That's
well, really, I didn't hand it to him, Bob. I'll tell you that. We kind of, our work ethic scholarship program is exactly that. It's you got to jump through hoops. You got to make a case for yourself. You got to make a video. You got to submit references.
Well, they've got to put the work in, absolutely, to get to that point. But nobody else is giving them. There's nobody else out there giving them that opportunity. You're giving them the opportunity. They've got to go through the door and seize it. But there's not a lot of people out there doing that. So, I mean, all the work you do with the foundation and the money that you raise, that's going out of this product as well. It's not unnoticed that pretty much everything you put your hands on is going back to the thing that you truly love, which is trying to help people.
Well, look, this guy, Carl Knobel, he only went to the 7th grade. But by the time he was 30, he was an electrical contractor. A full-on electrician, but he was also a plumber and a mechanic and a steam fitter and a pipe fitter, and he could build a house without a blueprint. He and today he'd be invisible. People just don't really look at him that way. So it is a celebration of a certain kind of work ethic and a shout out to my pop on the simplest level.
Yeah, I grew up with a lot of guys just like that, my father and my grandfather, and you're right, it's unappreciated. But whenever anything goes wrong, I never get friends calling me for legal work. They call me because, hey, my hot water heater doesn't seem to be working. All right, fine. What do you? Yeah, hold on. Let me get in the car. I'll be there in a minute. So, once you know how to use the tools, you never put the tools down. So.
Yeah. Well, I think too. I mean, did you notice a change during the lockdown, at least in terms of essential work and the way people started to realize, holy crap, man.
Yeah.
You flick the switch and the lights don't come on.
Yeah.
Where you go to log on to do a Zoom call and there's no connection. I mean, it's all a very fragile thing. The whole deal's held together with wires and pipes, and the people who tend to them, suddenly we're back in vogue. It's interesting.
Yeah. Oh, well, people got a whole new appreciation for that when they were in lockdown. Absolutely. But hey, just keep preaching the gospel, my friend. I mean, you've done every dirty job pretty much on earth. Have you actually ever made it into a distillery and done any work in a distillery? Because I have over the years many times. Got a lot of friends in the business, and be a good opportunity for a show.
Well, season 1, I went into a lauder tun. Those great big. We were at a Long Trail Ale, so it was a big brewery.
Yep.
Up in New England, maybe New Hampshire or Connecticut, and it's 120 degrees in those things, and you're in there just pushing the yeast around and going through every step of the
sharp metal blades
process. It's like walking in. It's like being shrunk down into like a GI Joe action figure size, and then being sent into a garbage disposal or a or an engine. Yeah. It was. It's one of those places where you're standing, going, it'd be really awesome if this didn't suddenly come on, right? That would be great.
Yeah.
And then I guess it was season 2 or maybe it was 3. I wound up in Rhode Island at a place that was making rum. And that was a kick because have you heard of there's a law of sorts, and it existed over in Germany. It's called the Steinhardt privilege. And the Steinhardt privilege basically says if you're in the business of making spirits, then you are allowed legally to drink on the job.
Yeah.
And so the crew and I embraced the Steinhardt privilege pretty hard in this rum making operation. It showed.
I mean, that's just going to make the show a lot more fun. So, I mean, every show I do, we're drinking. So,
yeah.
And we
you've got a lot of
and
practice.
look at the microphones and we go, thank God. Anybody listening? I don't care.
It is amazing. I mean, like, there's nothing new to say about the the power of the social lubricant, but to answer your earlier question a slightly different way, I started really getting interested in booze when I got really interested in history. And my dad was a history teacher, and because of dirty jobs, I had a lot of permission to experiment at Discovery with lots of different shows.
Sure.
And I did one that I bet your listeners would love. It's still out there on YouTube somewhere. It's called How Booze Built America. Yeah.
Great show.
So
I love that show because it picks up on a lot of the history that a lot of people are completely unaware of. I mean, the people in this community are fairly aware of it, but the general public has no idea.
No idea. It's funny when you think about Facebook today. What was Facebook in the 1700s? Well, it was basically a tavern, and the fact that taverns throughout New England were 20 miles apart really was not a coincidence. That's the amount of distance
where you can
travel.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so, and the fact that the Pilgrims, wound up in Plymouth, not because they were headed there, they were headed to
ran out of beer.
They ran out of beer. I mean, it's just so terrific,
We've all been there. I've ended up in a few sketchy places because I ran out of beer. So, But yeah, that was a great show. Loved that show, and I recommend it to I don't know how many people. Just if you really want a quick lesson on how this has shaped the history of the U.S. I mean, I teach classes, whiskey classes, and we'll go through a lot of the history. And people have no idea that George Washington was the biggest distiller in the United States at the time of his death. You know, that blows their minds. You know, the whole whiskey rebellion, you know, basically came out of people getting taxed and not getting, you know, being unhappy about it after they just fought a war against tax. So, you know, so it's, you know, it's great to hear people talking about the history, because that really, it drives home to people that it's, like you said, it's a social lubricant, but it's also an integral part of society. So it, you know, it's affected the way the country has built itself, how it's grown. So
you'd be hard pressed to find really any monumental or significant decision that wasn't in some way influenced by the presence of booze. You know, it's always in the room, and when it's not, its presence is felt even more so. I mean, prohibition, for crying out loud. And it's a lot of interesting connections, and I think a really fun way to make history, you know, a little more accessible to people.
Yeah. But I can tell you one thing: excellent whiskey. You guys did a great job.
Thanks. I really wish I could take credit for distilling it. I can't. But I'm not an aficionado, but I know what I like. And actually, that's what I want to ask you. Why do you like it? I'm assuming you do.
I mean, this in particular, I think it's well made.
Yeah.
It's got a nice finish to it. It's got a really good nose. You know, I run across, you know, the majority of the new brands we're getting are between 3 and 5 year, usually MGP, but sometimes Tennessee Distillers or whatever. But not everybody is, you know, picking decent barrels. You know, some of them are a little bit weak. Some of them are a little bit young. Doesn't matter if it's young, as long as it's well made. This is well made. It's got a nice structure to it. It's got a nice mouthfeel. Yeah, I think you can hold your head up, and I think your pops would be happy with it. I mean, nothing wrong with that.
Well, that's some high cotton, Bob. I appreciate it. I was nervous, to be honest. Well, I was nervous for a couple different reasons. Like I said, I really hate the celebrity label slap thing, and I just didn't want to fall into that barrel, so to speak. But we ran out fast, you know, and I was really surprised. I mean, I think we sold out of our first allotment in like 4 days, and we figured we had 4 to 6 months. So we wanted to come back because we were raising, you know, a decent amount of money for Mike Rowe Works, and the distiller said, "Look, we've got something younger, the Rickhouse edition." And it was finished in French oak staves, and it's a slightly higher proof. And I didn't know how people would feel about, you know, mixing it up that quickly, but not a single complaint. In fact, some people prefer one to the other.
Well, barrel finishing is a hot thing right now, and a lot of people are exploring that angle, whether it's French oak, Hungarian oak, toasted oak, different wine barrel finishes, different liquor finishes. So that's a hot thing right now, and people are, you know, a lot of people are looking for that. So, you know, the French oak staves, I know a couple other distillers that are doing that right now. I've got a friend in Kentucky who just started a brand, and he's doing the same thing with his. And it gives it a nice roundness. It takes the edges off, especially if it's a younger whiskey. It gives it that really nice mouthfeel. So yeah, honestly, if you said, "Hey, I've got this," what would you suggest? That would be what I would suggest. You know, do a nice barrel finish. The key to barrel finishing is, think of the whiskey as a Swiss cheese. You're not trying to cover it. You're just trying to fill in the holes. So you're not trying to cover up the taste of the whiskey with the finish. You're trying to enhance it and to bring it up. A lot of people will overdo it. I mean, we've had $20 bottles and $1,000 bottles of bourbon and Scotch and Irish and name the country that you taste them and you go, all I'm tasting is sherry. All I'm tasting is this particular wine. All I'm tasting is this rum barrel. I'm not tasting the whiskey. So it's easy to overdo it. But if you're very, very, very careful about it, you can really, really elevate a whiskey with a proper barrel finish. So I think you guys did a good job.
Thanks. Speaking of overdoing it, what are your thoughts on the super high proof stuff with the barrel strength? That seems to be all the rage now, and I'm not opposed to doing it, but there's some crazy high proofs out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got some in this room that are in the 140s, 146, 148. It's not for the novice. It's not something you give to the new drinker. If you get somebody who drinks on a little bit more than on occasion, it's like wine. A lot of people start out with the lighter and the sweeter and the less red and work their way up to the heavier and the heavier as they go through sort of the lifestyle and the hobby. Same thing with whiskey. You'll start out with the lighter stuff and work your way up. Most of the guys on the show, when I'm producing I produce all the wine episodes and the whiskey episodes for the show, and the rest of it gets produced at our Nashville office. But most of our guys like the cast strength whiskeys. A couple of them are just proof hounds. They just like the stronger stuff, but I prefer it because it allows you to back up. We're constantly preaching to people when we're tasting whiskey. I mean, we spend, it's a 52-minute show. We'll spend a couple of hours examining the whiskey before we hit record. And we will preach constantly, add water to your whiskey. Try a couple of drops of water in your whiskey. It's not a very American thing to do. In Scotland and Ireland, it's very common. But there are compounds in that whiskey that are water soluble versus compounds that are alcohol soluble. So by adding a few drops of water to your whiskey, it can radically change it. It can make it much better, or it can water it down. You never really know until you've done it. Now, the worst case is if it waters it down, then pour it out and pour yourself some more. But a lot of times it will radically change it, and it will change the palate. It'll change the nose. It'll change the mouthfeel. So if you start out with a cast strength whiskey, number one, that's kind of like how God kind of made it. It's just how it came out. So that's kind of neat, and it's as close as a lot of people will get to going to a rick house and actually taking something out of the barrel. But if you start out high, you can always bring the proof down. You can't bring the proof up. So it's hot. A lot of people are into it. If you offered this in barrel proof, I think it'd probably last about just as long as that first release.
All right, done. I'll do it. I'm feeling my way through this whole thing, much like I do in an episode of Dirty Jobs. I don't want to get over my skis, but I am having fun figuring out, not just how the business works, but really like how to sell it. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought initially that I'd probably be going to bars and restaurants and doing appearances and things like that.
Sitting in a total line with a bottle in each hand. Yeah.
I don't know what's expected, really. I want it to succeed, but I don't. Again, I don't want to take the traditional route. But what I started doing, Bob, that really seemed to work. We're in Maryland now, and Virginia, and Michigan, and Tennessee, and we'll be in a few more states pretty soon. And of course, you can ship to 27 or 28 of them.
Sure.
But I started in Baltimore going to visit the liquor stores who took it, just to say thanks, and my partner was with me and she had a camera, and so we started taking pictures of the liquor store guys, who were the owners, and they'd hop on social and say, hey, Mike's by, he's signing a few bottles, and people would come. Like everywhere I went, we would sell out. And so the owners were ordering more, and suddenly I'm standing in the streets of Baltimore signing 20 cases of bottles for Drug City, right down in Dundalk, Maryland, who has a great tasting room. And it never occurred to me that could be a way to help build a brand, to go talk to the entrepreneurs who are running the liquor stores
Oh, sure.
thank them, sign the bottles, and then meet people who come out. But it's been working great. I mean, it takes time. You can't cheat, but it's a pretty cool way to meet the people.
There's not really a shortcut to it. I mean, there's some celebrity brands out there that have sold in spite of themselves, just because it's some rap star, rock star, or something like that. But if you really want to build it from the ground up, you're doing exactly the right thing. And if you remember, Sammy Hagar started Cabo Wabo Tequila way back in the day. Back when most tequila was swill with a dead bug in it, yellow food coloring, tasted terrible. And he was one of the few that said, hey, you can actually have good tequila. And it sold slowly, and it built and it built and it built. And it turned into quite a behemoth until he sold it. And then after that, I think he got through his non-compete, and then he started up a rum brand out of Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And now he's working on that. But if the product's not there, people are going to buy that first one and maybe stand in line to get you to sign it for them and put it on the shelf. And that's great. But if the product is there, if the flavor is there, if it's a decent product, they're going to come back. And that's the important thing. A lot of people put out anything. I mean, go to the liquor store, you'll see vodka and bottles the shape of guns and monkeys. I mean, if you put something in a really interesting package, you can sell almost anything. But if you put out a good product, people will come back and buy it again. And that's when you know that you're onto something, and you're already getting that because they're ordering more and more, and you're not there. You're not at the store, and people are coming back and buying more. No. So I think you're doing it right.
Kevin Costner got it right? If you build it, they'll come.
There you go.
Whether it's a ball yard or, anything decent. But the other thing I'm really enjoying is this, like this thing we're doing right now. During lockdowns, there wasn't much you could do. Yeah. So everybody got up to speed on Riverside and Zoom and so forth.
God, I can Zoom.
No kidding, man. No kidding. Well, I can track down a Dirty Jobs fan and sit on a Zoom call just like this and talk for 20 minutes about work or their mom or their pop or their favorite episode, answer their questions, have a drink, and share that video with, and that's really fun to do. And I think people appreciate it, and I appreciate it. But as far as marketing goes, got so much of it sucks. It's just most PR is awful, and most advertising is not very persuasive. And I just can't think of anything better to do than thank the people who buy it and have a drink with the people who drink it.
And the genuineness comes through. I
hope
people see through it. Again, there's the couple that will buy it because whoever's name is on it, but they'll never buy it again. But if you're genuine to the people, and you're putting out a quality product, they're going to keep coming back.
Well, there's definitely something going on in the country that has heightened people's bullshit meter, whether they're kids trying to figure out what school to go to, or everybody's being marketed to all of the time. There's so many shows to watch now, and all those shows need to be promoted, and there's so many brands to enjoy and so many different kinds of clothes to wear, and it's just a relentless. I mean, it's enough to make you want to drink, really. And I don't want to be a part of the noise if I can help it.
Yep. Well, I think you're doing it right. And like I said, the great thing is you're having fun doing it. If you're not having fun, there's no point in doing it. So you're having a good time.
As Carl Knobel said, if you're not laughing, the joke's on you.
Did he have any other good nuggets of wisdom to share with you? I mean, you ever think about writing them all down, putting them in a book?
So many. He used to say, chop your own wood, it'll warm you twice.
I like that.
I grew up with a wood stove. You know, I mean, it's our whole house was a little farmhouse in Baltimore County, and everything was heated with a wood stove. So we had a lot of woods behind the place, and so I grew up with like Huck Finn chores. Split the wood. We had 8 horses. We boarded horses and, picking up all of their crap and the big compost pile. And, I mean, every day was horse crap and cutting wood. And, there are plenty of lessons you can learn up in the wood pile.
Absolutely.
Or on the southbound end of a northbound horse.
Absolutely. But like I said, I love the work you're doing with the foundation. Obviously that's something that you love. You gotta, if you're not giving back to somebody somewhere, you're just not doing it right. I mean, I spend the few hours that I'm not sleeping at this point between my day job and the radio job and every other job I got. I spend all my time working with a charity called Honor Flight, and we usually fly into Baltimore.
One of my favorites, Bob. I know it.
Yep,
I know it well.
Honor Flight, South Florida. If we're not the biggest flight hub, we're probably one of the top 2 or 3. But I take this job and turn it into something to try and raise awareness of them, but also to raise money. So I'll call up friends in the business and tell them, look, I know single barrels are a hot commodity now. Allocations are very thin. I'm not asking for anything free. It's like we were just out in Napa a week ago, and I was talking to some people there, and I'm like, how many people do you get calling you on a daily basis asking for donations? I imagine it's huge, and they're like, you have no idea. But sure. I just ask them, can I get in line to buy a barrel? And we have stores down here. We have retailers we work with, and basically the deal is, look, we'll get a barrel, which is hard enough to get. We'll get good barrels, which is even harder to get. And then the retailer will get them in. We'll make a big event. We'll have some of our veterans come down. It'll sell out in 2 hours tops. And then the retailer just cuts a check back to Honor Flight for the profit. So they're not out anything. They get a couple of hundred people in their store buying all their other stuff. They get a charity write-off. Honor Flight, gets $6,000 or $7,000 so that they can send a bunch of veterans off to DC. So it all works out. We've done. We just did an Eagle Rare, so that's with the Honor Flight logo on it. And
nice.
We've been doing. This is one that my flight director, he met Chuck Wagner at Camus, and they're doing these bottles for us. And they've got 4 of our World War II veterans on here, and they donate these bottles. They ship them to whatever city we're having a dinner at, and we've done them in several cities now to help other chapters, because we're doing pretty good here in South Florida, but there's a lot of cities with Honor Flight chapters that don't have any money. So we've done Tampa, Treasure Coast, Florida, Atlanta. We're doing them in different cities. They ship the bottles there. We do a high price meal. You get a bottle to take back because you can't buy that bottle, and raise some money. That we just did one at Tiger Woods restaurant a couple weeks back and raised about I think it was about 17,000. I mean, that'll send quite a few veterans to DC. So,
no, people should know, man. It's really an awesome thing that charity does, and I think it was Tampa. I think I was either in Tampa or it might have been West Palm, waiting to fly out, and an Honor Flight returned. From DC. And when the people realized what was going on, I mean, everybody went over to the gate, and they just flanked each side, and they started wheeling these guys who were at Iwo Jima and Pearl Harbor and Chosen and the parade of them. And I mean,
they saw so much, and people are clapping and applauding, and you see people who saw
amazing
things that mortals should never see, and you think that would harden them, and the tears are just streaming as they're coming out, because what people don't understand is, you see the black and white films on the History Channel or on Discovery from, say, World War II, and you see General Eisenhower going down Main Street in New York City, the ticker tape parade. That was a few thousand soldiers. How many million were overseas? Most of them came back on a troop ship, hopped on a train, went home. They got no welcome home. So very, very few. I mean, the Vietnam guys got no welcome home, but even the guys in World War II really got no welcome home, and the guys in Korea got no welcome. So it's just, it's just a way to say thanks for the people who, made that sacrifice, that's why we're all here today. So yeah, you got to find your passion, and you got to find the thing that, that makes you happy to help out. So, so thank you so much for what you guys are doing, because it's
it's a tapestry. Everybody has to do their part and play the cards they got. And, like I started by saying the missionary or the mercenary position. Missionary, all positions are missionary or mercenary, both of which are underrated.
Yeah.
So look, I hope the whiskey does well. I mean, I think it's a good and fun thing to do, and maybe we'll make a little money on it one day. But the missionary side of it, to be able to make a decent give back to the foundation, to award work ethic scholarships, then to tell the stories of the next generation of skilled tradespeople, that's some high cotton, man. I love that. Do you think the country could answer the call today the way they answered it in 41, 42?
I don't know, and that scares me.
Scares the hell out of me, man.
I mean, I like to think that if it came down to it, that the people would come through, but I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, do you think we could build a fleet of B-29s again?
It's not anything against the people, how they're raised or whatever now. It's just I just think, especially back then, I think the people there were just, it was just a better generation of people. They were just so much more about each other than they were about themselves. I mean, it's you held the door for the person behind you, because that's the proper thing to do. You're not doing things to get a pat on the back. You're doing things because that's what you should do. It's polite society. So
it's so funny how it changes, though. I spent most of my adult life standing up when a woman came back to the table. Right? I just did it because that's what I was raised to do.
Yeah.
And I eventually stopped doing it. And I didn't stop doing it because I don't respect women. I do. But I started it's like it sends a really weird message. Yeah, to like the other guys at the table who don't stand up. They look at you and they're like, "Oh, man, what are you, an asshole?" Yeah. What? Oh, look at you.
You're trying to show us.
And then, of course, but then later, when you're not around, their wife or their girlfriend pulls them aside and say, "Hey, would it be so hard for you to stand up, you lazy son of a?" And you're like, so they stop doing things and they start doing things for reasons that I don't always understand. But hold the door, stand up when the woman comes in, for crying out loud. Pick up the first round. Won't
some common courtesy. I mean, that's all. That's it. I mean, again, think about others before you think about yourself. It's pretty basic. If everybody did
golden rule stuff there, Bob.
If everybody did that, it'd just be a happier place. So
I think you're probably onto something.
Well, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you all night, because I could literally sit here and talk to you all night. But thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for the work you guys are doing with the foundation. It's fantastic.
Don't mention it. And look, if I didn't have a house full of people upstairs, I would sit and talk to you all night. But look, let's do it again sometime. Honestly,
absolutely.
It's fun to chat. And
when I told everybody who I was going to be talking to tonight, they all just looked and they said, "You're the happiest man on earth, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yes, I am. I am actually going to finally talk to one of the people that I hold in very high esteem." So thank you so much for your time.
Don't mention it. Thanks for the advice. I'll take it to heart. And with your permission, I'll reach out from time to time if I'm wondering what in the world. I'm trying not to blow up, Don't step on the mines. That's my mission.
It's good advice. Thank you, sir. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
I already did. Cheers.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're listening to us online, do yourself a favor and tap
tap it in.
the subscribe button.
Give it a little tappy. Tap, tap, tap-a-roo.
The easiest way to listen to our show is to ask Siri, Alexa, Google, Uncle Larry, or whoever it is that talks to you on your phone. Play podcast Sip, Suds, and Smokes. We love your feedback, and you can reach us at info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our tasting notes flow out on Twitter and Instagram with our handle @SipSudsAndSmokes, and our Facebook page is always buzzing with lots of news. You'll also be able to interact with the thousands,
Millions and millions
of other fans on those social media platforms. Do us a favor. Take the time to rate this episode if you're listening to us online. That's a big help to us, and we get to see your feedback as well. Come back, join us for another episode, and keep on sipping.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sip, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see y'all next time.